Phosphorus is essential for plant and animal growth. It is important for the production of DNA and RNA, cell membrane, and ATP. Organic phosphorus is bonded to carbon in animal and plant tissue, while inorganic phosphorus is the type needed by plant. There are three phosphorus sources. First is in the geosphere where phosphorus is found in rocks and soil, which are the main pool. Second is the hydrosphere, which contains phosphates dissolved in marine and fresh water. Lastly is the biosphere, where phosphorus is found in plant and animal tissue and in animal waste products. Phosphorus cycle is a slow process. Phosphorus moves slowly from phosphate deposits in land and in shallow ocean sediments to living organisms and then back very slowly to the land and ocean. And there are four key steps in this cycle. First is weathering, erosion, or mining for fertilizers. This breaks down the phosphorus in rocks and travels through the soil and into the water sources. Second is absorption by organisms. Third is decomposition. Animal excretion contains phosphorus and decomposers utilize it. When organisms die, some bacteria convert organic phosphorus to inorganic phosphorus through mineralization. Lastly is sedimentation. Some phosphorus are buried in sediments which over time becomes rock. Some phosphorus in the soil gets washed in the ocean where similar process takes place.
Sulfur cycle has both sedimentary and gaseous phase. It is a key component in most protein and is important in the production of antioxidants in the body. Sulfur enters the atmosphere from several sources: the combustion of fossil fuels, volcanic eruptions, exchange at the surface of the oceans, and the gases released by decomposition. First, hydrogen sulfide gas is released into the atmosphere by volcanic eruption, hot springs, and the anaerobic decay of sulfur-containing biological material in swamps, bogs, and tidal flats. Certain marine algae produce dimethyl sulfide, a volatile compound that enters the atmosphere as tiny droplets. Sulfur dioxide gas is then released into the atmosphere by volcanoes and forms when dimethyl sulfide reacts with oxygen gas. The burning of fossil fuels, such as coal and oil, releases sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. Then, sulfur dioxide reacts with atmospheric oxygen to produce sulfur trioxide. Some sulfur trioxide reacts with tiny droplets to form sulfuric acid. Sulfur oxide also reacts with ammonia to produce tiny particles of ammonium salts. The winds carry droplets of sulfuric acid and particles of sulfate salts, which then fall to the earth in acid deposition. By adding sulfur compounds to the air, the use of fossil fuels increases the rate of acid deposition. Thus, all living things require sulfur to make proteins. Plants get sulfur by taking up ions of sulfate salts from the soil. Animals get sulfur by eating plants, and all living things release sulfur compounds when they decay. The composition releases sulfate salts, which can be taken up by plants, as well as gaseous hydrogen sulfide, and some hydrogen sulfide enters the atmosphere. But when decay occurs in an oxygen-free environment, anaerobic bacteria break down hydrogen sulfide and release sulfur gas. Oxygen-requiring bacteria can incorporate sulfur into sulfate salts, which can be taken up by plants and enter the food chain once again.
Oxygen constitutes about 21% of the atmosphere. The major source of free oxygen that support life is the atmosphere, and other reservoir are water and carbon dioxide. There are two significant sources of oxygen. First is the breakup of water vapor through a process driven by sunlight, which is evaporation. In this reaction, the water molecules H2O are dissociated to produce hydrogen and oxygen. Next is photosynthesis. Oxygen is produced by photosynthetic autotrophs like green plants, algae, and photosynthetic bacteria, and consumed by both autotrophs and heterotrophs, in the process of cellular respiration. Oxygen is continuously produced and used up in the atmosphere. It readily reacts with other elements and compounds, which causes temporary withdrawal from circulation, making its cycling in the ecosystem extremely complex. Part of the atmospheric oxygen is reduced to ozone by high-energy ultraviolet radiation. Ozone is ambivalent atmospheric gas. In a stratosphere 10 to 40 km above Earth, it shields the planet from biologically harmful ultraviolet radiation. Close to the ground, ozone is a damaging pollutant, cutting visibility, irritating eyes and respiratory system, and injuring or killing plant life. In a stratosphere, ozone is diminished by its reaction with human-caused pollutants. In a troposphere, ozone is born from the union of nitrogen oxide with oxygen in the presence of sunlight. A cycling reaction requiring sunlight maintains ozone in a stratosphere, chlorofluorocarbon, methane, both natural and human cause, and nitrous oxide from denitrification and synthetic nitrogen fertilizer can reduce stratospheric ozone.